Well, good evening and welcome to another edition of the Marketplace Forum, coming to you live from the beautifully warm, pleasant city of Johannesburg this evening. And we have a very, very fascinating topic tonight, folks. We've got a topic which we called When Money Destroys Nations. And are there some kingdom alternatives to that? But before we climb into that, welcome, thank you. It's great to have you with us. We trust that you are well. We trust that God is in your soul. We trust that you are feeling encouraged regardless of the circumstances. And we're so glad that you're able to join us this evening. And we've got Sam Okorosi in the background there, Charles Hellier kind of pushing all the buttons. Thanks, guys. If you've got any questions, if you've got any comments, please use that chat function in the background at YouTube, on the YouTube background, and let's get that discussion going because at about 8:45, Sam will be online with us here, and he's going to be conveying any of the questions or comments that you may have for us this evening. But before we get into our topic, I'd like to just take this opportunity to introduce these two amazing men. Firstly, Philip Haslam, author of this book that I've just been going through. It's entitled When Money Destroys Nations. Philip is passionate about creating sound money principles. He's passionate about creating alternatives in countries, specifically countries with troubled currencies. He serves as the head of communications for a company called Zimbo Cash. And Philip, you probably a husband of what? Why don't you tell us?
Well, good evening, Dorian. As you say, my name is Philip Haslam. I'm married to a beautiful woman, Bronwyn, and we've been married for 5 years. We deeply in love, and I've got one beautiful daughter. We're based in Johannesburg, in South Africa, and we're passionate about sound money.
Brilliant. Now we're going to spend time, we're going to climb into your book this evening. But before we do that, we were going to be joined by your co-author, Russell Lamberti, but unfortunately Russell couldn't join us tonight. But we have a great stand-in. And Tumani Santungwana, my brother, it is so good to have you with us. Tumani is an educator at the Sound Money Society. He's one of the regional ambassadors for Zimbo Cash, and they'll tell us all about that this evening. But he's also a husband, he's a father, and he's passionate about training the next generation in sound money and monetary justice. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So, Tumani, great to have you with us, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm excited. Looking forward.
Now, folks, we are going to dive right in because what typically tends to happen on the Marketplace Forum is just when things get juicy, we hit 9 o'clock and we've got to rush things. So we're going to climb in early this evening. Hopefully, we're going to give a good opportunity to really get into the meat of what you guys have put into this book, and then give an ample opportunity for further discussion and questions afterwards. Now, Philip, bro, I've been reading your book, and I'm loving it. I'm just loving the simplicity by which you kind of communicate some of these principles, how you break these concepts down. But why don't you tell us a bit about the background? Tell us about the book. But before you tell us about the book, tell us why you wrote this book. And tell us what this book is about.
Thanks, Dorian. So I studied at the University of Cape Town, and my background is in finance and economics, and then I took an additional year and I became a chartered accountant. But during that time, I was very passionate about biblical economics, and specifically had gotten exposed to a lot of Dennis Peacock's teachings, his Freedom series. And at that stage, I was going around telling people why, debt and money printing were not such great concepts. That kind of grew into a course that I was presenting around South Africa. Actually, presented that course around the world, but it was a specific moment in 2008. After the 2008 financial crisis, governments were printing money on a huge scale, and they were calling it, quantitative easing. Actually, there were a whole lot of phrases that they had that no one really understood. And at the time, I said, no, look, this is money printing. And most economists I spoke to said, no, they wouldn't be so silly just to go print that much money. And I was like, no, this is money printing. It's a major concern. And so we continued going around presenting. I say we, it was my co-author and I, but there was a few people who were quite passionate about this at that stage. And then I forget the exact year, but we were presenting to an organization that actually was connected to one of the reserve banks in Africa. And during that talk, my co-author turned to me and he said, look, we've got an example of what happens when a country prints money right next door to us. Right. We live in South Africa, and that country is Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe experienced a very brutal hyperinflation in the early 2000s, culminating in 2008 when the currency collapsed out of use. And right. I thought that was very fascinating. He said, look, I'm telling you, there's stories in Zimbabwe that no one has ever told before, that you would never have heard before. So I thought, wow, that's really interesting. A lot of Zimbabweans in South Africa, so I thought I'd interview them. And I started to interview them, and I literally was lay awake at night, like so fascinated by these stories. I can't believe that people went through these experiences. And so I decided to go to Zimbabwe and just interview people. I mean, I packed out my days just interviewing people. Most of the time, people, their response was, I can't really remember the hyperinflation. I've sort of blocked it out. And then I'd ask them sort of questions like, what happened when, the stores emptied? How did you get fuel when you couldn't get it in the fuel stations? Mm. And then the stories would come. And, just people sharing their hearts. And that sort of resulted in us accumulating a lot of amazing stories. And what we've done is we've taken those stories and packaged them into a way that to explain basically what happens when a country prints money. How does it affect us personally? How does it individually affect each person in their capacity in all of society? And we've taken these stories and we've dotted it through the book and basically used it as a narrative to communicate how extremely destructive money printing is on a nation.
Now, Philip, and it's fascinating, and I think you do such a great job at just showing how Zimbabwe spirals down from a country that was the breadbasket of Africa at one stage, highest literacy rates, I think, of the highest literacy rates in Africa, but for many of us, certainly in South Africa, we heard about it. We would see the notes being printed. We'd see the currency, the numbers just going up, the more zeros adding on. But for us, it was theoretical. Tumani, you lived through this, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And did you just share, how did you experience, for you and your family, I'm sure it wasn't just theoretical.
This was really a challenging and a devastating time for us to go through this period of hyperinflation. The first time that we started feeling it was the constant rising of prices. Prices were continuously rising. And from there on, commodities started disappearing from the shops. I mean, in the shelves, you wouldn't find your basics that you are used to getting, like when you walk in any Pick and Pay or ShopRite. Those commodities, you wouldn't find them. But the surprising thing is you could find a lot of these commodities on the black market at 3 or 4 times the price. So that's one thing that really was beginning to signal to us that, look, there's something going wrong in our economy. And the next thing that really hit us hard as a family was to have our savings wiped out. I mean, you would have saved money for quite a while with the hope to use it in the future. And the money just lost value. And I remember withdrawing it. It was worth buying just 2 loaves of bread. And if things probably had not gone that route, maybe we're going to invest into buying a good suburban house. But we lost those savings.
Wow.
And then the other thing is to do with the fuel. Service stations went dry. But the amazing thing, you will still find cars moving in Zimbabwe simply because of the black market. Zimbabweans will go to Botswana or come to South Africa and Messina. They'll come and buy fuel and sell it on the black market.
And sorry, to Tumani, just to unpack a bit, you're saying it was available on the black market. Was that because the government tried to impose restrictions on price increases, and therefore no one was prepared could buy those products for those Zimbabwean values, and therefore no one was prepared to sell it. Is that what was happening?
Yeah, there were restrictions, price control, so to speak, on the products that were being sold in the shops, and literally no one was prepared to sell at the prices that were being gazetted. So that's why the products moved to the black market, and that's where you would find the products. It's the same with fuel. Yeah.
So in other words, the government would say, all right, you may not charge more than 1,000 Zimbabwean dollars per liter of fuel, but it's going to cost you 4,000 Zim dollars to buy that fuel as a retailer. So you can't buy it and sell it. But there were people that prepared to pay 5,000 or 6,000 because they needed the fuel and they knew that was the going price for fuel. And so the black market started thriving. Is that what happened?
Exactly, that's what happened. It started thriving. It's like they were fueling it in one way or the other, because people were now actually saying, I'm in business. If you ask them, what are you doing? They were selling products on the black market. And this ranged from, goods to Forex, fuel, airtime. You would all find it on the black market.
Fascinating. Now Philip, I recall, I recall that at the same time, land invasions were picking up. The veterans were starting to stir in Zimbabwe. I mean, maybe you and Tamani can just kind of comment on that. I mean, was that a direct link to money printing and inflation, or was that just happened to kind of coincide, but it wasn't linked at all? I don't know. What do you guys? What was your assessment?
Go ahead, Tumani. I'll comment after you on this one.
I would like to say the farm invasions were the beginning, and you remember that the war veterans were demanding gratuities from government, and we remember on the Black Friday where the war veterans were given this gratuity, and overnight the Zim dollar just plunged as a result. So them pursuing the issue of the land invasion, I think it only came, it was a follow through from what happened when they received their gratuities, because they were also losing value. The gratuities, were now worthless. So that was probably an experience that they also realized that as much as they received the gratuities, they were not helping them in any way.
Yeah, great. Well, let me add to that. Then, I think if you look at it economically, the reason a government prints money is because they've run out of other alternatives to fund their expenditure, and so you typically have two major. You have several things that are happening in a kind of a money printing spiral. The first is that the government is accumulating debt. It's consuming in debt. And as it consumes the debt, everything's happy. Everyone's happy. But a time comes when lenders begin to question whether the government can actually repay those debts. And you have a typically some form of credit crisis, a banking crisis of some form. In Zimbabwe in 1997, it was called Black Friday. It was a currency crisis. And the World Bank had withdrawn their loan facilities. Mm-hmm. And so the government then turned to money printing to continue funding itself. Now, so to answer your question, what actually happens in that moment is an extreme centralization of political power.
Right.
And money creation begins to mean that the government can consume significantly, and at the same time, rising prices causes a whole lot of discontent with people. And so the government is forced to become more radical in its views, more radical in its more populist in its tendencies. And this happens in most hyperinflations. I mean, this happens often. And so what you saw was these land invasions, but what actually was happening was a lot of discontented people, and the government then saying, well, look, let's solve these problems using some populist approaches, but they weren't actually resolving the underlying issue of rising prices and kind of people being impoverished in the process.
Mm-hmm. So gentlemen, I mean, but Zimbabwe isn't the only country that prints money. I'm sure every single government in the world prints money. Philip, you and I were chatting last week. The amount of money that the US is printing right now is, I mean, maybe you could even put them into context for us relative to how much that, but yet we don't see the same hyperinflation in these countries. So the skeptics out there might go, well, actually, is it really this or isn't it? I mean, what do you say to that?
Okay, great question. So you packed in a few comments there, and I'm going to unpack those comments. So let's talk about our world today. Okay, our world today is currently, right now, is in a huge tipping point, and that tipping point is where governments are going berserk printing money. I mean, trillions of dollars.
Right.
In the last 6 months, the United States has printed, give or take, I mean, you know, a trillion here, a trillion there, about $10 trillion. Okay. Now, a trillion is a lot of money. Like, how, and you know, very few people have any idea how big a trillion is. Okay.
Yeah.
Trillion is a million. Okay. Now, if we just were to put that into context, like, again, big numbers, that would be if we said it in rand terms, that would be 160 million rand. Okay, that's been printed, or the equivalent. Let's sort of unpack it. It would be the equivalent of printing 100,000 rand and giving it to 160 million people.
Okay, hold on. Okay. So 100,000 rand given to 160 million people. So every South African getting 300,000 rand.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the equivalent, yeah, and it's just money created from nothing. Okay. And so you know, that's just the United States. Eurozone is printing money hand over fist. England, this sort of bastion of sound money, of a strong currency, they're printing huge amounts of money at the moment. Switzerland, relative to the size of its economy, is printing money. It's printing money the most. Okay, Swiss central bank owns more shares in Facebook than Mark Zuckerberg. Okay, it prints money, it buys dollars, and then buys Facebook shares. Japan, it's been printing quadrillions of yen. Quadrillions of 15 zeros. Okay, China also, you know, it's just going berserk. And this is all happening right now in our world today. Okay, so your question is to me, well, like, surely, you know, we would see, you know, inflation, runaway inflation. Why haven't we seen it?
Exactly.
Okay, so now to answer your question is, first of all, we are seeing inflation. Okay, if you ask anyone like in this community, okay, and if you're listening on YouTube, go ahead and comment whether you think prices are rising, are they stable, or are they falling? Okay, and I've spoken to a lot of people about this because this is the topic of my, you know, my life calling to talk about. Everyone is experiencing prices rising. Okay, I've you know, got in my own mind several little things that I've seen. You know, what are the tuna prices and what are egg prices and this sort of thing, and they're doubling. Okay, doubling over periods of years, but they're certainly rising. And the cost of living, that results in cost of living increases for everyone, or said another way, that everyone's actually becoming poorer. The ability to buy things is falling. So I think the first thing to say is, no, we actually are seeing inflation around the world. But let's just sort of, the next thing to say is that it's not runaway inflation. Not yet. Okay. And this is one of the lessons of Zimbabwe, is that money printing is progressive. Okay. It's an amazing thing. You can, if you're on the money printing press, you could print 100 rand, and not one person in a million will be able to detect that you actually printed 100 rand, you know, for yourself. And you can buy real goods and services with that newly printed money. But what happens is, it slowly starts to put an inflation pressure on people. And inflation pressure really means that it's devaluing everyone else's currency and their incomes, and relative to what you've purchased. Right. And that takes time to work into an economy. Mm-hmm. I mean, no country just slipped into hyperinflation. You don't just suddenly boom in one year, just like, oh, flip, we found ourselves in hyperinflation. Mm-hmm. It's a series of events and decisions that are made that are progressive in their decisions. Okay, so I'll give an example. In 2001, the United States dropped interest rates significantly. Okay. And everyone was like, oh, wow, that's great. And then you had this huge boom and money flowed into the property sector and prices rose. Then 2008 happened. The rising prices caused a big boom and then a bust in 2008. All the banks were insolvent. They needed to print trillions of dollars and they reduced interest rates to zero. Wow, that's great. That newly printed money went into markets, particularly credit and derivative markets. Prices were rising again. Now in credit and in asset markets. And that caused a bubble, and that bubble in 2020 has burst, okay? And now they're printing money on a much larger scale, and that's sort of gone to support the asset markets again, and you're causing this bubble to rise again. The point is that these are progressive things, and we are certainly seeing a radical increase in money printing around the world as a result of this progressive path that we're on.
So for a layperson like myself, what you're saying, Philip, is sometimes you see it directly in the price of a loaf of bread, but other times you see it in the fact that asset values were this high and overnight they just implode, and all of a sudden the housing market, the bottom falls out of the housing market, or the stock market is going to suddenly just give way because all of a sudden, it's being propped up by the fact that cash is flowing in there, but it's cash that's being printed. So are you saying that that's how you see inflation as well, by just asset prices dropping overnight?
Exactly. So there's a key thing that normally confuses a whole lot of people, and I'm going to try and explain it as simply as possible. But the way our global banking system works, okay, it's completely screwed up, is that when you borrow money from the bank, they don't actually have the money. They create the money out of nothing. They just put digits on your bank account. Okay, there's even a formal Latin word for it. It's called ex nihilo. They create money out of nothing. Okay, and they create it and they lend it to you. Okay, and when they do that, they increase the money supply and it causes inflation. Okay, so we've had, broadly speaking, a fair amount of inflation over the last several years. Okay, but what happens is that newly printed money can go anywhere in an economy. And it'll cause, wherever it goes, it'll cause rising prices. And then, so slowly it'll trickle down into the rest of the economy, and the rest of the economy's prices will rise. Mm-hmm. But some of those, prices will rise, and they shouldn't really rise, like certain types of investments or certain types of assets. They shouldn't really rise, but they're rising because a whole lot of new money is going in there, and it rises, and you get this whole boom. And it's the very typical thing that happens with money printing. You get a boom, and then it busts. And then because, so this is kind of the difficult one to understand, because they lent money into the system, they printed money and they lent it to people. Suddenly now you have this bust and all the banks are insolvent. You get what's called a monetary contraction. It's a brief monetary contraction because the government has to print money and bail out the banks and start bailing out people, and then they print more money than there was actually in the system. And so you get these huge, swings in the money supply, and it starts to really cause havoc in an economy broadly. It starts to accelerate prices rising generally across the board.
And so, is it your opinion then, Philip, that that some of these first world nations will follow at some stage? We'll see massive contractions again at some point.
Yeah, Dorian, I think this is the defining issue of our time. It is the defining issue of our time. Every single person who's listening to this podcast and who's not listening, every single person in our generation will be affected by the money printing that's taking place around the world. Every single person. It'll affect you uniquely, and it'll affect you personally. And it'll be different in different countries. But what we're seeing is this broad move away from any form of real rational logic. People, governments operating rationally, logically, there's this view, and you even alluded to the view. You said to me, all these countries are printing money on a huge scale. Well, where's the inflation cost? And this view has actually permeated all of the government institutions, most of the universities around the world. And this view is, we can print money, we can create money from nothing, and there's absolutely no cost. And that's a toxic view, because once you get this, if you can create money from nothing, why not just create more money? why must we work hard for money?
Yeah.
Why not just create money from nothing and stimulate the economy? And that's where the global economy is going.
So guys, does the Bible say thou shalt not print money? Tumani?
Well, the Bible advocates for just scales, in the marketplace. So as much as we can talk about it saying, does the Bible say that should you print money? It's silent, but I think you can interpret from that scripture just scales. So would you say in printing money, are we seeing monetary justice there? Definitely not. We are not seeing any form of monetary justice. Because assuming I was running a printing press myself, I can be increasing a rand every year and you won't detect it, but it will catch up with you with time. And therefore, there's no justice there. There's no monetary justice in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think it's great to talk about it. Why don't we just go to scripture, Proverbs 11:1. This is a reference price, a reference scripture, but there are many references throughout scripture to the concept of equal weights and measures. I'll read it over here. This is in the ESV. It says, a false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. I'll read it again. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Now, most people you speak to will have no clue what that means. Most people think that refers to, justice in government, okay, or justice in the court system. But what they don't know is, so context is important. When back in Bible times, people didn't have notes as representing gold in a bank account or something to that effect.
Yeah.
What they used in trade was scales that would measure how much you owed someone. Okay, so let's say, for instance, you said, okay, look, you need to pay me 3 ducats of silver. Now, a ducat, most of these biblical references to money are actually biblical references to weights. And so, what would happen is the person will get out the scale and put some silver on the one side, put some weights on the one side and put some silver on the other side. And then eventually when you measure appropriately and it balances, then you know that you've got the right price. Okay, and you can make payment. Now, what the scripture says, and typically what the reference throughout scripture is equal weights and equal measures. Okay. Or equal weights and equal scales. Okay, those are the same sort of concept. A measure maybe is something where you kind of would scoop up and you'd measure something, or a scale is something where you would measure. Now, in the scripture, Proverbs often does that. It contrasts two things that are important in two sort of statements. So it talks about a false balance, but a just weight. Okay, so and effectively, what it's talking about is, when you start to fiddle with the scales of trade, the measurement basis for trade, or when you fiddle with the weights that you put onto the scales, it's an abomination. Oh, everyone, the word abomination, it's like, whoa, that's really, God's really being serious there, like abomination is like kind of bad stuff, like child sacrifice, like fiddling with the measures of trade is equal to same as that. Right. I've often thought about that, and I think that, in scripture you get these references to, like, sin, something affects you, maybe iniquity, something that affects your family. That's like it goes down generations. Abomination is something that, like, it causes desolation. You even have that phrase, abomination of desolation, but it's something that you see throughout scripture, is a reference that it actually ends up polluting the land, polluting people. When you start fiddling with the measurement basis for trade, it's really not so good. Okay, but so that can be the kind of, geez, that's quite a bummer, that's quite a downer, And this is why I love the scripture. It contrasts these two things, is that it says a false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. So here's the thing, is that when you establish just weights,
Yeah.
just measures, just scales, you actually begin to release the delight of the Lord on a nation, on a society, on a people. It's this beautiful contrast. I mean, it's an intense contrast where there's money printing, or what we say is money printing, or where there's a skewing of the measurement basis of trade. It's terrible. It's terrible. It impoverishes people. It is not a good thing for a nation. It ends up like it's not a good thing. But on the flip side, you have this beautiful thing of, if we work and we establish ourselves to work and establish sound money principles, what we call sound money principles, where the measurement basis of trade is just and reasonable and applies to all people in the nation, then you release his delight on the nation. There's this equal and beautiful opposite truth.
It's lovely. It's beautiful. So on that point then, and I think it's a very, very apt scripture just to demonstrate how God is into sound principles, sound money principles. So, Tamani, on that note then, what are some of the, what could some biblical solutions based on sound money principles, what could they look like?
Well, for instance, I'll be more on maybe on the application.
Please.
How would we apply this to our present day? And we have identified what the issue is at hand. And I would say it's important that we look at fixing the supply of money. Once it is fixed, it's like that's the starting point where we are moving and applying that scripture of just scales. Because when it's fixed, that means nobody will be able to tamper with it. And we can work hard knowing that our money is safe, and we know that the banking system is secure and it's sound. And unlike when it is left maybe to a central authority who can at any time manipulate the money or influence its value one way or the other. So I think our starting point in application to that scripture would be to fix the supply of money. Yeah.
Wonderful. If I could just add to that, Tamani, we believe that there's actually three parts of that. So it's money printing. And there is the simple solution is to fix the supply of money.
Right.
And then it's to allow people to transact with relative freedom. Because you can fix the supply of money, but if people are controlling that in the use of the money, then it's very restrictive. There's not the same freedom. And the third one is that no one can take your money without you authorizing them to. Yeah. Either using by actually doing it by transferring that money, or by releasing it using a digital means such as like a private key or signature of some form.
Okay, so fixing the supply of money, which means that we can't print more. So there are only so many rands out there, and they don't increase. Is that what you're saying? Correct. Secondly, then making it easy to trade with those rands. Okay. And thirdly, making sure that no one can take your rands from you. Is that right? Or your currency from you. Okay. So do we have 2 out of 3 of those right now?
I must say, from my context, where I'm coming from, I don't think, you would agree with me that the supply of money is not fixed. So that means we are not experiencing sound money.
Yes.
And the fact that no one can access your money without you authorizing it. For instance, we are talking about, we have a central monetary authority. One way or the other, they can influence or control the value of your money depending on what they are doing as a central authority. And obviously, using it with ease, well, we can discuss that one, but so
foreign exchange controls make it hard for you to trade with some people. So okay, all right.
Yeah. So
just to add to that, we have relative monetary freedom, and while we have relative monetary freedom, it's great. It's a blessing.
Yeah.
But what you see is what happens when you have these currency crises, then suddenly the exchange control begins to rise. Yeah. And then, there's sort of legal tender rules, and, how much money can you withdraw from the bank, and what sort of payments limit, your payment limits. all of those sorts of things, price controls, all of that begins to, cause a downward spiral. So, but in the sort of broader payment sense, we currently have relative monetary freedom, but that's the second one. The third one is, if you did anything wrong, you could have your money taken from you, And I said, do anything wrong. It's all in the eyes of certain, of the regulatory authorities. But yeah, I would say we have, we've had relative stability. How long it'll last, I'm not sure.
Okay, no, I mean, you have heard that people have gone to their bank account, not just Zim, even in South Africa, and if SARS thinks you owe them money, then the money's gone, so I guess that could be your third point. So, all right, I get it, but so what are some of the solutions then, Philip? I mean, how, are there real sound money options out there?
Yeah, Dorian, I think this is why we're excited about the concept of blockchain. The idea of a blockchain, very simply, is that you don't need a central monetary authority, okay? And they call it a distributed ledger, but very simply for listeners, effectively a blockchain is keeping a database of the supply of money on many different computers, and no one controls any one computer. Okay? That's effectively what it is, okay? And it uses sort of a bunch of cool cryptography tools. But effectively what it does is it gives us the ability to create a cryptographic proof that no one can create more money than has been designed by the system. Okay, so that's the first thing. Right. Next thing is it's outside of the banking system, because there's no central authority over it. If you have access to the internet, appropriate access to the internet, then you have relative freedom in making payments. And the third thing is that you get a private key, and a private key allows us to no one can make payments unless you actually have that private key, and so it gives it individual autonomy over the amounts that they own and control. That's very simply it's the concept of blockchain that applies to many different cryptocurrencies, and specifically in a Bitcoin sense, we see that Bitcoin and the Bitcoin alternatives. I mean, there's a sort of competition for who's going to fulfill the main role in this, but we see that Bitcoin is a global reserve sound money system. It's recognized around the world, and it uses this blockchain to fix the supply of money. There's 21 million Bitcoins, and it sort of gives relative monetary freedom to people. And we believe that we're only at the very early stages of seeing this revolution, as you get this money printing on the one side, so you're getting this rise of this new technology on the other side.
Okay. So in short then, Philip, what you're saying is this blockchain technology almost gives you the security that there will only be a fixed supply, and what, no one can hack blockchain? Is that how this works?
Correct. Yeah, no one can hack the blockchain. I mean, there's different protocols in this. It's, you can get into the complexity of it, but with the proof of work algorithm with Bitcoin, it's extremely difficult for someone to hack in. In fact, I know someone who was an expert hacker, and he heard of this Bitcoin thing, and he thought, these poor suckers, I mean, I'm just going to show them how I'm going to hack it. And this was when it first came out, and so he decided he went to go hack it, and he realized that he couldn't hack it. And it was when he realized that he couldn't hack it that he realized, oh, this thing is going to go big. And so he invested at a very early stage, and he then went on to be one of the lead developers of the Monero project, which is a sort of a privacy token. But bottom line is that some pretty amazing cryptography that's out there. My co-author quoted a book which said that artificial intelligence is the technology of centralization. It's enabling centralization, and cryptography is the technology of decentralization. And what cryptography is allowing us to do is to decentralize money and banking broadly, and take it out of the hands of central authorities and put it into the hands of the people.
Right. But Philip, just help me. So how many different cryptocurrencies do we have out there at the moment?
I have no idea, but about 5,000, maybe 10,000.
So aren't the creators of those cryptocurrencies just the new central banks in the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly. Oh, it's not exactly that. Anyone can create a cryptocurrency. Right. I can show you how to do it. You could do it in 5 minutes. Okay. Right. Go to a website, put in some money, and boom, you got a cryptocurrency.
Okay.
The issue about money, the whole fundamental concept of money is that it's two things. It's a record of account, something that you use to account. That's the mechanism to record trade. Okay, and two, it's a network effect. Okay, so the bigger the network effect, bigger than the network, the number of people who are actually using that currency as a record for trade, right, and for storing value and for making loans and that sort of stuff. The bigger the network, the more power and entrenched that currency is. Okay, so you might have 10,000 sort of notional tokens, but only a handful actually have real network effect power. And so the real race with the cryptocurrency sort of things is who can get real networks actually trading in their token, and that becomes a trading token, a trading currency, of a decentralized trading currency.
Right, and then if you convince people to use your cryptocurrency, they have the certainty that there aren't going to be a whole lot more digitally printed, and therefore they know that if they're going to use your currency in their network, they can be certain that it's not going to be there's not going to be deflation applied to it. Is that kind of
correct? I mean, the whole thing about these things is that network, there's certain types of networks, and money is actually a very specific type of network. Okay, yeah. It's called a dual-sided network, yeah, or a multi-sided network, but it's the concept is it's called a dual-sided network. And the dual-sided networks, it's a specific type of network where you've got to get both a buyer and a seller transacting in that currency. Okay. And you've got to do that in two levels. One, you've got to get it in exchange markets, and two, you've got to get it in the markets where people are trading for real goods and services. Okay. But if you can get that, if you can actually establish that network, the whole thing about dual-sided networks is that it's difficult to start. Once you establish it, it's very difficult to disrupt. So you get this very powerful network effect that it causes it to be entrenched. An example would be Visa in the 60s, 50s and 60s. They basically posted a whole lot of bank debit cards to people in the banks, to bank customers. They got 1 million people on their books, and then they approached all the retailers, and they said, "Look, we've got 1 million people. Will you put our technology in your stores?" And they did, and then people started transacting using the Visa cards. And now Visa is practically you cannot disrupt it because of the power of this dual-sided network.
Right. Fascinating. So we're going to invite Sam to kind of join us on here. So folks, if you've got any questions, please make sure that you get those down there. And then we're gonna invite Sam to join us here to kind of join this discussion and the conversation. While Sam's coming on, Tumani, could you tell us a bit about the Sound Money Society? What's that about?
Yes, I think building up from what Philip was talking about, a Sound Money Society, we are at that stage where we are building a network. People who are like-minded, who want to bring a solution to the current crisis that the world is facing of money printing. And we have a team of guys, and we call them ambassadors, who are there to educate, to train, and to really get the word out about what a sound money system is and what monetary justice looks like we have discussed before. So we are in that process of trying to share this knowledge about sound money. So the Sound Money Society is open to people that are willing to learn and be able to be ambassadors and take out the word there about sound money.
And if people wanted to, is there a place they can go to sign up or get onto how do people find you?
If you want to find us, you visit our website. It's www.zimbo.cash. That's our website. Or you can also visit our Facebook page, or you can go to Instagram, or you can also follow us on Twitter, or you can go to Reddit as well to read some more. So you'll be able to get all that platform. It will throw you to our website where you can sign up using your ID and your email. And then at this stage, you also be allocated with free tokens.
So the Sound Money Society, is that soundmoney.org? I think it is it?
Yes, the soundmoneysociety.org.
The soundmoneysociety.org. And what we'll do, folks, is we're going to put in the description, once the video is on YouTube after this, we'll then put in the description all these links so you'll be able to kind of connect with Philip and Tumani. But Sam, my friend, tell us what's been going on the back end there, bro, and if there's any specific questions. Do people buy it? Do they not? I mean, what's happening there?
Guys, thank you so much. This has been just as interesting as I expected, and I've been just fascinated. I think half the comments were coming from me just because I was just so intrigued by the conversation. But I guess maybe Philip, just to start off one set of questions, and there's been lots of them in the comment section. But really, can you just convince us that inflation really is that big a problem? I mean, we heard the Zim stories, but someone was saying, maybe money printing is a great way for government to fund its debt. Somebody was saying that some inflation is good, not all inflation is bad. Someone else was saying, well, we've got COVID and the economy is struggling. What could have the governments done other than printing debt? So I think we still need a little bit more convincing around money printing is bad kind of message.
Okay, I'm happy. I'm game. So I think first thing is if you're really wanting to learn, you should go and read. I encourage you to read the book When Money Destroys Nations. There's several other books. If you go to the book website, whenmoneydestroys.com, you can get a bunch of free books that are basically focused around educating around these things. But just to summarize, why don't we just kind of, when you get into these conversations, people you can get into the clouds. Let's just sort of talk about two fundamental views of the world. Okay, I would argue that these are kind of the kingdom of darkness versus the kingdom of light. But here's the fundamental views, and you'll get this. The first one is you'll get in most university campuses around the world, and that's that you stimulate an economy by consuming in debt and by printing money. Okay, the other side, the complete opposite side, is that you stimulate an economy by people working hard and creating things or producing things, and by savings. Okay. And so you have an economic crisis. There are two different fundamental approaches. This side will say, economic crisis, borrow more, get the IMF to bail us out, print more money, okay? This side says, you have an economic crisis, you've got savings. You rely on your savings, produce more, work hard, find creative solutions, okay? Fundamentally two different opposite views, okay? Now, I think the answer is that people say some inflation is good. And I think my question back to them is, if you find me one person who would prefer to pay a higher price for goods than a lower price, then I'll believe you. But I do not know a single person who would actually voluntarily pay higher price for goods. Lower prices result in us being able to buy more stuff. Okay. The lower the prices, the better it is for people. Inflation is not a good thing. People confuse what they do is they confuse economic growth with prices rising. That's the confusion. Economic growth is very different to prices rising.
So maybe if you were able to wave a magic wand, 6 months ago when COVID hit, and central banks all over the world are saying, well, our economy is going to the doldrums, people are losing their jobs. I guess your solution would have been, well, let's hunker down, let's figure out how to be more productive. Let's not borrow more. Let's figure out how we share the resources that we currently already have, food parcels, whatever it is, and let's work our way out of this instead of kind of print money out of this. Is that kind of how you would have addressed COVID if you had a magic wand?
No. Okay, so if I had a magic wand, what you're basically saying, if I had all power to make choices, okay, I wouldn't have I would have gotten rid of the debt money system, the debt money printing system, long time ago. See, what happens with the debt money printing system is that you consume, first of all, in debt. Everyone like, hey, you can buy it now, get it on credit, it's okay. And what happens is the day of reckoning comes.
Yeah.
When the day of reckoning comes, everyone's like, bail me out, there's economic pain. And then they turn to me and they say, what would you have done when everyone had the economic reckoning? Okay. And that, so for heaven forbid that I say that, like, let everyone go insolvent and the banks go insolvent. I mean, like, no one wants to hear that message. I'm not actually spreading that message. What I am saying is that, money print is always driven by a debt crisis and by entitlement spending. If you think that the government is the solution to your problems, then you think that they must print money. It's a fundamental, actually, view in life. If you think that our problems are solved by the government, they only really have two ways of resolving it. It's debt and money printing.
Right.
If you believe that we as people are responsible for our own economic well-being, we should be saving. We should, as a people, and this is what happens when you get, like, it's called the Protestant work ethic. This is what happened in the Reformation. People, like, it was a mass, change of people's hearts. John Calvin brought out Institutes of the Christian Religion, very influential book. And it caused people to basically work hard and save, think multi-generationally, like the kind of real biblical business, not kind of what's the government going to do to bail me out?
Yes.
And it was the Protestant work ethic that established this process of people working hard, saving, consuming, not consuming more than they actually have in their income.
And I'm playing devil's advocate with my first question, and maybe it's not right to play devil's advocate on a Christian forum, but one of the things that we've been saying around COVID is that it's really started us thinking, even in our own personal lives, around the value of that emergency savings, that living, within your means, making sure that you're spending less than you're getting in, and these crises actually, when you're on the other side of the story, when you actually have assets, you're actually better off in a crisis. And one thing that I've also noticed is that part of money printing is that the money goes into these assets. So you have stock market booms. So you've had a big boom since sort of March this year. Share prices all over the world are up, and the problem is that it creates even more inequality, because those who are asset rich continue to be asset rich, and those who actually rely on proper jobs and salaries and savings, etc., are actually left in the dry. And that's what's happening here. And we saw it again in 2008, 2009 with the global financial crisis, that printing money actually increases inequality in the system. And that's a problem that that we have to deal with. A question for Tumani, Zimbo Cash. So people wanted to find out a little bit more about that. What is it built on? Is it a blockchain technology? Is it on a distributable ledger technology? Can you tell us a little bit more?
Zimbo Cash, like you can see from the word, it's an intervention into the current crisis that Zimbabwe is going through. So we want to establish a decentralized digital currency that is built on blockchain technology. And
fantastic.
While embracing the whole idea of decentralization and taking our power from the monetary authorities and giving it to the people.
And while we're there at Tumani, I mean, somebody was saying, you know, when you were telling us about the doom and gloom of our current monetary system, somebody said, you know, should we keep our money under mattresses? I mean, if as a worker in Zim, you know, being encouraged on this platform to become a saver and not a consumer, and not going to debt. I mean, could somebody somebody mentioned that, you know, Zim teachers are currently earning $35 US dollars a month as a salary. Should I take my $35 and whatever little bit I can save and put it into Zimbo Cash and save that? I mean, is that something that could be a store of wealth?
We are looking at that in Zimbo Cash. We are saying like now Zimbo Cash is on an exchange, Bitnam. So we are saying to Zimbabweans, buy Zimbo Cash on Bitnam. Be the person that will invest early for your future returns. So instead of you keeping it under the mattresses, but there are also options that are being available for Zimbabweans. Instead of keeping it under the mattresses, they should exploit those options intelligently and responsibly as well.
Great.
Can I make a comment on this?
Sure.
So a couple of things. If you want to know what you can do money printing in your country, the best thing you can do is educate yourself. It really is the best thing you can do. You know, when you gave us a statement, you said, you know, the doom and gloom of money printing. And there's a Chinese proverb which says, truth is heavy, therefore few people can carry it. And you know, we need to stay in the, you know, like to stay in the understanding of what actually is happening in our world today, and be able to just sit in the pain, and then be able to only from that space, like, educate ourselves and make choices from that space. I think the next thing to say is that, you know, Zimbo Cash is a community project that is looking to establish sound money, but it's highly speculative. And we want to be just quite careful on a Christian platform that what we're not trying to do is to sell like a cryptocurrency project based on, you know, hey, this is the Christian message, therefore you should buy, as much as like, hey, like take an assessment for and look at it as you know, look at it for its merits. And particularly in that context, if you're Zimbabwean, you don't actually have to buy it. You sign up and you get allocated it. The project is looking to build a network effect by giving it to Zimbabweans.
Great. And while you're on network effect, one question said, you know, can you just balance us here, because sounds almost like a pyramid scheme when you're saying a network scheme. You know, is it akin to some a pyramid scheme?
And I'm happy to answer that. You know, no, it's not a pyramid scheme. A pyramid scheme is where you put money in, and then however many people you have under you, you get money back. There's no one, you know, the Zimbo Cash community is not asking anyone to put any money in. This is something that's built by people signing up and joining. It's very similar to WhatsApp. It's like the WhatsApp network effect. The bigger the network is, the more it has value for people in the nation. And so it's it's not a pyramid scheme. It's not a scam. I mean, the whole thing about a scam is you know, what money you put in, you're going to get taken from you. We're not like the Zimbo Cash community is not asking anyone to put any money in. It's building it by growing a community of people who are passionate about sound money.
Great. No, thanks, guys. I personally found it very interesting, and I think that certainly both sides of the conversation are very important for us to dig deeper into, to understand the current global system and its reliance on debt, and kind of that circulating of debt, and then what are some of the alternatives, blockchain technology, cryptocurrencies, and as you said, there's thousands of these currencies, and I suppose one needs to understand exactly what the T's and C's of each currency are, what you want to use it for, and education is key. And so, yeah, just to echo your words, we're not saying to anybody, go out and buy millions of Zimbo Cash dollars. You need to do the homework, you need to get proper advice, and you need to assess your own financial situation before making any financial decisions. Dorian, bro, this has been really great. I know there were a couple of other questions around, how does debt, affect in exchange rates, and obviously, one country issuing more debt than others, and not balancing that debt issuance with productivity is eventually create an inflation problem, which then hits the exchange rate. So that's some deep kind of economic theory, but I'll hand back to you and maybe get some closing comments, since we are out of time on a very interesting topic.
Thank you, and thank you for that, Sam. Thank you guys for signing in, for being with us this evening. Please hit a like if you liked what was being said. Please ring that bell, subscribe and ring that bell, because that means we can keep in touch with you, and it means more people can kind of find this out there when people are doing searches. 9 o'clock has come and gone, and this always seems to happen to us when we get into a topic that kind of just that inspires. So I just want to say thanks to Tumani and Philip, and any closing words, folks, before we sign off.
Tumani.
I would say really for us as Christians, unfair for us to keep quiet whilst we can see that there's an injustice, and God has given us the brains and the opportunity, and I think it's the time to seize the moment and to realize the opportunity to establish a sound money and to educate people about what monetary justice is. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks to Tumani, and I just in closing, we've set up the Sound Money Society. The website is sort of currently in a holding page, but you can sign up at the website to join our mailing list. I mean, what we're passionate about is about really having conversations and empowering people with real content. We've got sort of a bunch of books, to the extent that you're interested. We've got a bunch of books that you can read in terms of educating you around the real destructive nature of money printing, and how amazing sound money is, and what it practically looks like in terms of implementing it. We want to be creating dialogues. I think our goal and passion is to get onto the campuses with Sound Money Societies to be presenting. We believe that university students are it's effectively the intellectual driver of our world, and we want to kind of light these universities on fire with the beautiful message of sound money. So if it's you, you can go to our website, www.soundmoneysociety.org, or you can send us an email at info@soundmoneysociety.org, and we can connect you in, and bear with us. We've got a lot of work that we're doing, but we really want to connect in with you and see how we can plug into your campus.
So gentlemen, just thank you. And I just want to thank both of you for taking the time to come and share something that clearly is a passion in your lives. Philip, I think you landed it so well. I mean, this discussion, just keeping that dialogue going, because this discussion has stirred so many thoughts in my mind and in my heart, raised a whole lot of questions as well. And I think that's exactly the right place to leave it, is let's keep this dialogue going. because we need to keep pressing in to find kingdom solutions to the world in which we find ourselves today. So, gentlemen, thank you very, very much. We appreciate you. We trust that you guys are going to go from good to great with this initiative of yours. And we look forward to kind of having you back at some time in the future just to hear about how things have progressed with Zimbo Cash and with hopefully a whole lot of other initiatives that have sparked as a result of this. If you are on a campus, you would like to get Philip or Tamani or some of their colleagues out, by all means, get hold of them at the Sound Money Society, and we'll put all their details and links in on the description once we post it on the website. And guys, thank you again for joining us this evening, and we trust that you're going to have a fantastic week. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time with some exciting developments at the Marketplace Forum. So if you want to hear what's on our heart about where we're going to be going forward, join us in 2 weeks' time, and we'll be exploring some of those together. God bless everybody. Thanks for joining us. Gents, thanks for being with us tonight.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.